If you had to imagine a perfect self in a perfect world, how would you imagine it? Ultimately, the big thing that we like to say is that we need this world to be perfected, right? We need this world to have some sort of fix and rectification and somehow everything work smoothly, perfectly, right? And I think we like to imagine everyone's in peace, right? Everyone's loving each other. Everyone is giving to each other. Everyone can be together, right? And that ultimately the main work, the main thing that we're trying to accomplish is us being down here for us to perfect both in our internal world, fix ourselves up, and then from there, those around us help out as much as possible, right, with their physical needs and help them get involved in their own spiritual work. And then from there, just keeps going, flowing to everyone else around us. So the main thing then is, how do we actually get this perfected state? And what actually does this perfected state look like? What is the main goal? What are we actually trying to accomplish? And that main thing ultimately is the act of giving. Is to be a giver. This is the biggest lesson, and as simple as it is, this is really the deepest thing. You want to give. That's all you want to do. Why? Because your essence is what? Your essence is our Creator. Your essence is our Creator. Your exact being is coming from infinity, right? And what is this level of infinity? This level of I guess, infinity, right? Even above infinity that we're talking about, of our Creator, of God, is what? Is just the complete goodness. Complete goodness. Complete goodness is what? To give, right? When you're perfect inside, what do you want to do? You just want to give, right? And so now you can imagine a perfected state in the world, right? Where everybody's living their actual essence. What does that look like? What does it actually look like? That looks like everybody giving, right? Emulating our Creator. Everyone being able to just give, me to you, right? And ultimately the main thing that someone should be working for is to break down all these boundaries within yourself. To break down the boundaries within yourself, right? Because ultimately, what are these boundaries within myself? Where do they stem from? Everything's coming from a place of insecurity. Everything's a place of insecurity. Any judgment that you have onto others as well is also going to be just a projection of your own internal world, right? So any sort of, again, judgment I have on someone else or judgment I have on myself and sort of hatred, this and that, ultimately is always going to be coming from a place of within myself. Now, of course, there are high levels of people that can actually, let's say, hate or be angry from a good place. But, maybe less than, I don't know, a dozen of those people exist in the whole world, right? Those are actually going to be perfected people. But what are we dealing with? Within ourselves, it's fine the level that we're on. We have to work within our level to realize everything that we're doing and feeling about ourselves and others is ultimately coming from this place of a brokenness within inside, right? Now the whole thing is now to fix this thing, this brokenness inside, right? And again, now why do we actually have this brokenness inside? Because somewhere along the lines of creation and we had this sort of crash landing, right? Our soul had a crash landing into a body, into this physical world, right? And we came from a place of everything being one, everything being giving and light and love. And what do we end up in? Everything being separate, right? Before we got a good consciousness of care of those around us, until the age of 4 years old, 5 years old, right? Preschool, kindergarten, stuff like that. Until then, what do we think, right? We looked at the world around us and everything was a place for, going through pain and struggling and striving. And you could just, everything, majority of what you learned, I heard this from somebody, everything that you learn from 0 to 5, right, is probably overwhelming majority of what it is that you know now, right? Everything after 5 years old is, fine, it's not as big of an accomplishment compared to what you were able to grow and learn those first formative years. So ultimately what happened, right? Those beginning years, you're, going through life and you're failing and you're messing up and, you're saying whatever, you're singing words wrong, right? And you're saying words wrong and you're, whatever else it is, you can barely, function with all your motor wise, right? And you just can't do anything. But you're not caring about failing this and that, and you're going through life, and there's no boundaries, there's no borders, everything is just perfect, everything's fine, everything's in flow, and you're always just going through pain, and you're crying, and that crying itself, that pain itself is just the growth process itself, and you're going through it, and everything's good. And then what happens one day, who knows, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old, you go through some failure in school, and you come back, right? Come back to your parents, you say, oh, I'm stupid, or I'm bad at sports, I can't do this, I can't do that, and I'm not going to try. Ultimately, what happened? What actually happened? Because that consciousness development was the beginning of you realizing that you are a separate being from those around you, right? And that you want a certain approval, you want an acceptance, you want to fit in, right? You want to be a part of the team, right? So with this gain of consciousness becomes a downfall of me understanding that there is a separateness. There's a reality of separateness, and there's then a reality of trying to make yourself fit into something. Again, judgments aside, whether it's good or bad. Ultimately, again, we're in this world, we're meant to work with it. Everything is meant for its purpose. But ultimately, that is going to be the biggest root for all of our issues within this world. And the main thing for us to do is look back at every little thing that you are doing within your life, any little desire that you have, any pattern and behavior that you have, to go back to that source, right? What's that source? And I'm not saying you're going to be conscious of it, for some of them. For the most part, you can get pretty conscious and bring it back to its source, right? But that's the main goal, right? Go back to its source and realize, right, this all started from a place of me getting lost within the separation, right? And thinking that there's such thing as separation, and that this person is against me, and that I have to care about this person around me, which that's a whole different understanding for another day, right? But ultimately, that's the goal. Get back to that place, get back to that source, and realize, really, any boundary that I have, any behavior that I have, any negative, positive, right? All these things, desires, whatever it is, all these things are coming from a place of me having to put up a boundary or a border from this young age, of me not feeling safe, me needing to go into survival mode, and trying to then bring myself into the pair, right? Before creation, you're already part of the process in the entire symphony, right? Without needing to be anything, because just as you are, everything's perfect. After creation, now all of a sudden there comes what we call the tzimtzum, the contraction. Everything's concealed, right? Everything's confusing, everything's dark. In that place of darkness, concealment, confusion, in that place, what do we have? We have the illusion. The illusion of what? The illusion that you are separate. Thus, when you are separate in your mind, right, then you need to go make yourself into something that can go fit in. Why? Because your exact essence is what? To be one. That's your essence, is to be one, right? To be one with everyone around you. And what does that actually look like? As we're within a separate world, where everyone's actually a separate being, what does that look like to actually be part of a one within the duality? Giving. It's giving, right? And that's ultimately going to be the main thing or method of bridging this gap of duality and oneness at the same time. It's going to be giving, and that's going to be the main thing. It's always going to be giving. So what do we have? We have the Bala Sulam here, which the Bala Sulam is the Mikubalim, one of the mystics from over 100 years ago, right? He's one of the main commentators on the Zohar. Comes from Warsaw, Poland. But one of the main lights that he brought into the world is going to be this act of giving, right? And revealing what ultimately it is that we're supposed to be really, really striving for. How is it that you can actually bring down this, say, upper level light into something that's practical down here? And what's going to be that main way? It's going to be giving. Why? Because what's ultimately the essence of God? Right? Part of the essence of God is giving. Giving, that's the main thing, giving. Right? We say God's entire being, right? Again, if you're coming from a place of complete perfection, right? What do you want to do? You're complete perfection. Imagine you have no borders or boundaries or anything. You're perfect. Everything you have is good. What would you want to do? There's nothing for you to get. So what are you going to do? Your being is to give. There's no insecurities. There's no holes. There's no damages. You just want to give. And that's ultimately the way that it manifests down here for us as well. So our souls being this portion of God, right? So then how can we actually emulate that actual self? That, again, our actual self, what actually is it? As Bala Sulam here says, and I'll just read it within the translation to English, so the Hebrew. It says that really, again, our souls are divine, right? Therefore, the desire to experience God and the desire to be in the state of giving always exist within ourselves, right? At first, our spiritual desires are in a state of potential, and we're disconnected from them. Being in the presence of, right, truly spiritual people, right, and learning, holy books and whatever else it is and working on these things is able to then develop ourselves to want to actually go about giving. And that's the main thing to remember, right, is that, again, our soul is what we call a chelik elokah mimal, as it says here, right? And our actual, again, desire is to be and emulate God and to experience godliness within this world and to be in a complete state of oneness with God within this world. And that's ultimately what we want to do. That's what we want to do. So how do we do this? How do we do this? Again, one way, through Judaism, is going to be through the means of the Torah, right? And what's the Torah, as Bala Sulam here says? What's the Torah? The Torah is all about giving. Shafa unasina, right? Flow, abundant flow in giving, right? And he says the essence of that shafa, that abundance, and the giving, right, is what? is going to be Hashem. That's Hashem, right? So when I'm actually connecting, then what is it that I'm going to be in a state of? Giving. Giving. Now, ultimately, that comes with caveats. Why? Because ultimately, what are we? We're receivers. Our actual essence, as much as it is to give. But as he says here, right? Our desire to receive is our essence. It will never be nullified. Our desire to receive itself needs to emulate God's giving. That's the main thing. That's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to turn over this ratzon, this will to receive, into what? Into the will, the desire to go give, right? To go be mashpi onto somebody else, give shev to others, right? And that's ultimately what we're trying to striving to reach, right? The state in which our desire to receive is not used for self-service, rather, only for divine service, right? Right? It says rak b'derech hashefa labore, right? The ability to, I mean, it seems like, I guess the giving, in a way of giving to our Creator. Giving to our Creator. And that's going to be a whole different thing for another day for really what that means. Like to give to Hashem, to, I guess, be able to emulate Him down here, what that means. But here's the main point, right? Giving. Why is it that we want to give? Right? When a being here wants to give, then what happens, right? They're in a state of being limited. They're in a state of limitation. Why? Because ultimately it's whatever it is that you can flow, right? This, I guess, imagine putting water into a cup, right? And putting light through a colored glass, right? You're now limiting that light or that water into whatever that vessel is, right? Whether that light is going within the colored glass and it's becoming the color of that glass, or it's the water going into the cup. So now that water is going to be limited by the cup, and so too the light to the glass color. So that's going to be when you receive. But when you give, what are you doing? Right? You're in a place of being unlimited, or a space of being unlimited, right? Again, this essence of you, which is a chelik elokav, imal mamish, which again, you can't actually divide infinity. So this infinity coming out from you, then what? That's coming out. That's coming out. It's a place of infinity, right? Then you're able to emulate Hashem as much as possible within this world. Again, God forbid to say that we are the actually fully God. We cannot say that, right? But as Hashem chooses to manifest Himself within us, right? As much as we can emulate God and infinity within this world, right? In as much as we are also nullified to Him completely, right? But do not get mixed up and think that you're God or the entirety of God. So here's the main thing, right? Giving, we're going to say here, that's going to be eternal, without end. There's no limit. That's the state that you want to reach. That's the main work. All the work is going to be in your giving. And this could be something that we can talk about another day. That ultimately, the biggest measure of your emunah, your faith and your trust in God and God's oneness, is going to be how much it is that you're actually willing to give without being scared of losing. Whatever it is, that's good to me. And so that's going to be your main homework. Give. How can I give? Whatever it is, something, one thing a day, right? Pray for somebody, right? Give to somebody, something. Everything's about giving. That's where the spiritual work begins and ends, right? Everything's revolved around giving. How much do I want to give, right? How much can I give to others? And that's going to be the main thing. When I do that, then, again, that's where the internal changes really start to work. In that place, then what happens? You go beyond yourself. You break all the boundaries. When you break all the boundaries and borders of yourself, right, any shell, within yourself, what do you find? You find that those shells were never actually true to begin with, right? The things that came after the fact, the things that came from the crash landing. But what do you find? You find your actual essence come about. That actual essence being the, I guess, desire to, I guess, as to say, you're receive, but the receiving in order to give, right? That's the main perfected state, is receiving in order to give. That's going to be your main perfected state. And that's what the Baal Sulam here says as well, elsewhere. Receiving in order to give. And that's going to be your main perfected state. And that's what we need to come forth and work to. Everything that you're doing within your life, everything you're receiving from, again, Hashem giving us stuff, is for what purpose? To give out to others, help others. That's the main thing, help others. Everything is within this world. Everything's within this world. That's where the work is, within this world. So, you got to go do actions. That's literally where everything starts and ends, is through your giving. So, main thing, always do that. If you really want to break beyond yourself and find out what your true essence is, right, then start emulating the way that, I guess, Hashem would act. And that's how you really break beyond yourself. And in that moment, right, where you, I guess, transcend yourself, you actually start to actualize yourself, right? In that moment, then when you actualize yourself, then what do you find? Then you get beyond yourself, right? So we're simple terms, when you actualize who you are, then you go beyond yourself. I'm paraphrasing this from Rabbi Y. Jacobson. That's the main thing. When you actualize who you actually are, in that moment, you transcend and you get to a place of who you truly are. So that's that.